Okay, we have a few. Anyone from Penn that's not been there? Or, okay. So I thought Mr. Kramer would just open this up, just sort of beginning with the mythology when the story broke, along those lines, and I'll decide that.
I'll see what I can do. I certainly hope Mrs. Gillette has found peace in whatever comes after this, because she sure has been subject of a lot of speculation in the meantime. I think Chris's video covers the ground so well that it doesn't really leave me a lot to say. I only have 3 pages of notes. That's a big print. I didn't see all of the show of hands, but let me ask this. Do any of you folks have you heard any stories or been involved in any stories around this thing, other than the sort that were mentioned in the film? Nobody. I tried to think, most of what I've ever heard has been along those lines. I do remember when I was a kid, I mentioned that everything I ever heard about it, there was always this kind of vague aura of a threat, that if you crossed a line somehow, that you personally were gonna find yourself in trouble. One of the things that it just occurred to me lately, I remember hearing years and years ago, was that as the years go by, the image is filling in. And when the image is complete, the lady will jump down off the stone and terrorize Penn, which might be a good thing in some ways. But mostly it's been along those lines, that she's punishing someone from beyond, whether it's her husband or who knows, some unfortunate third party. I wanted to mention a few of the dull, ugly facts of the matter. Unlike the gentleman in the video, I love a good myth, but I also like a good debunking, and oftentimes the debunkings are at least as good as the myths are. As was mentioned, Frank Gillette actually died first, which kind of messes up all the stories about her coming back to haunt him while he was still alive. If you go up and look at the stone, the stone on which the mark appears is not actually anybody's grave. It's a marker, a rather large one, but a marker for a family plot. And there are matching individual headstones along 2 sides of it. And there are a grand total of 7 burials up there, including another married couple. And so I got to wondering, well, why not, why haven't there ever been any stories about the bishops or the brewers? Why has it always centered around the Gillettes? You know, maybe it's one of those things like where there's smoke, there's fire. You never know. Again, as was mentioned in Chris's film, the Gillettes were well known around here in their life. Many years ago, and now I wish I had written this down, I talked to some folks who had known the Gillettes in their lifetime, and they said there was absolutely no truth to any story that they somehow didn't get along. They in fact were a very happily married couple, and all of this stuff was a total fabrication.
Well, he was a dance teacher.
He was a dance teacher. So you're thinking all that
Well-
squiring other ladies around type thing?
It makes you think.
I don't know, Rich, that's you thinking that.
Well, it's strange. The Grange is right across the street from the cemetery, right, or just down?
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So-
Was
Did
it
he-
square dance instructor?
Yeah.
That's funny. Yes,
Where did they live?
interesting that you should ask that. As a matter of fact, at one point, they lived right down the street from me. At one point, they lived at the corner of South Avenue and East Main Street. And they were there for a long, long time, but they moved while they were both still living. And I can't remember where it was that they moved to, but they always lived in the village of Penn Yan, if that tells you what you wanted to know.
What about their daughter?
That's a good question. I have wondered about the daughter in a number of respects. I do not know where she lived. Do you know?
I haven't been able to figure that out either, no.
Do we have her name or anything, or is it?
Yeah, her name was Josephine Graves, which makes me suppose that she must have married. She lived from 1892 to 1965. She's now buried up there. In fact, she was the last burial in that little plot. And that's all that I know about her. I think probably something more could be found with a little research. But I'm glad you brought that up because I thought about her in connection with the stone and its image. We know that the image has been on the stone for some length of time. As a matter of fact, I have here in Joni Hand's handy dandy little folder a little bit of a smoking gun that I'll tell you about in a minute. But as I mentioned in the film, and I'm not sure quite all of this got in there. When I talked to the gentleman who was in the monument business, who was Nielsen Granite, he said that while the defect itself was of a character that was very familiar to him, he says something is caused by exposure to sun and weather and this kind of thing. Defect in and of itself is not unusual. What's unusual about it, in his estimation, was, first of all, it's very, very large. And secondly, as large as it is now, it was difficult for him to imagine that when the stone was put there, that there apparently was no sign of it. And we say apparently because, obviously, if you had paid out a big buck for a thing like that, and it showed up and it had a mark on it, you'd say, Nobody said, Who was around at the time the stone was placed? Who was in a position to accept it or reject it? We don't know because we don't know when the stone was put there. I will tell you this, all the other stones and that great big one all match. Don't know what that tells you, but they obviously weren't all put there at the same time. My guess would be that the big stone, the one with the image on it, was put there when the plot was first used, okay? Which would have been in 1895. So, by the time Matilda Gillette died, which was in 1936, the stone had been there for 41 years. Don't know how long it takes for a thing like that to appear, but 41 years. And this is as good a time as any to get to the smoking gun. I mentioned in the film that I thought it would be interesting to go back through the village employment records, if they were available, and see who it was who had been the superintendent of the cemetery before, two superintendents before the guy that I knew, and who told me, now I'm not sure if this got in there, the fellow that I spoke to told me that his predecessor's predecessor had made up the story out of thin air. Because he kept getting questions from people about what was that thing on the stone. And so he made up a story that he thought would take in the image and explain it, and would sound kind of titillating and scary and stuff like that. Now to the smoking gun. This is an article that appeared in the Chronicle Express issue of August 8, 1936. During the past week, Superintendent Charles Havens of Lakeleaf Cemetery has been asked by many people about the location of a certain family plot and a certain grave. Da-da-da-da-da. Sudden growing interest in this particular burial. This woman who comes back and haunts her family. If you look closely at the tombstone, you can see her face. Doesn't say the name here, but I think it's safe to assume which stone is being discussed. This is August 6th, 1936. The image is already on the stone and the word has gotten out there. And it sounds like the word had just started to circulate, because now somebody goes to the trouble to put an article in the paper. Superintendent Havens says he's awash in people who are asking about this thing. August 6th, 1936. So maybe we could make an educated guess that it was around this time that the image, whatever it is, became noticeable, okay?
That's the same year you said she died.
I'm glad you pointed that out. Matilda Bishop died December 1st, 1936. So she was still alive
when this image came.
when this thing was drawing spectators.
And he died earlier.
He died in 1929.
Well, maybe it was his face.
Now, why couldn't it be? Right?
Yeah.
Why does it have to be the Gillettes? Why isn't it the Bishops of the Brewers? Why does it have to be a woman's face? I don't know. I think that's a really, really good observation. But I've never heard it any other way.
There seems to be a subgenre of folklore that revolves around the spurned woman's apparition, returning to the woman in white, the crying woman, and it kind of fits into it. I know where I grew up in Chautauqua County, we had in Jamestown, there's a cemetery where there's a woman's figure under glass in the cemetery, and of course it's it's a sculpture, but for whatever reason they decided to have it there. And it's sort of a similar situation for our neck of the woods where, she died on her wedding night and now she haunts the gravestone and all this stuff. So it's an interesting phenomenon.
And I'll just point out, I don't know if I shared this sentiment, but I know that a lot of people have said in situations like this, maybe not relating Granite, but where decades and decades ago there was some kind of mythology bringing up from a woman in distress. It's because it was pre the 60s, 70s, where women were allowed to air their grievances in a literal way. Instead, there's got to be some metaphoric, grandiose sort of mythology, folklore that brings their distress to some kind of attention. I've heard that many times in things that you're sort of relating to. So that's an interesting thing. If we had some kind of a case study here, it would be really interesting to see sort of where the psychology and the sociology and the anthropology all sort of overlap. And I think that's one reason why this legend has continued to spurn for decades and decades and decades. So
I think it would make a great term project if you were taking a mythological literature class in college or something like that. Anybody have any
But you
questions?
keep bringing up the Bishops and the Brewers. Are they related to the Gillette somehow? Through marriage
Yes.
or something? Oh, okay.
And I have known what the relationship is, but I can't remember, sisters, cousins, something like that. But they're all buried in that same little plot. And see, Chris does a little selective filming there in his video. He shows only the side of the stone that says Gillette on it.
Right.
You go around to the other side of the stone, it says Bishop.
Oh, all right.
So somebody thought, at least at the time the stone was put there, that they were deserving of equal time. But somehow, the legends all,
But isn't the face on the Gillette side?
no, it's on the side. And the inscriptions are on,
On the front and back?
yeah, the image is on, the stone is rectangular. The image is on one of the short sides, and the inscriptions are on the two long sides. Sir?
Do you know who the kid and his other kid who broke their arm and their leg?
Not kids anymore, but the ones that came and talked to, the guy that was standing there in the story is what they're saying, right?
You mean who that really happened to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't.
I don't know either. I just know that it's a story that he heard from someone that went to the gravesite. I guess that they were like the camp on the east side of the lake. I think they were there. What's that name of that camp again?
Iroquois.
Iroquois, yeah. Visiting that in the 60s, 70s, and he was there, and someone, had some kind of a violation of the stone, as you say, is what the myth holds itself to be, and then there was some kind of a comeuppance or some kind of a karmic debt that happened via him breaking his leg.
So, all goes to show you, when you go to the cemetery, show some respect. Anybody else have any?
So Matilda could have been a bishop.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing. And that is find outable. Like I said, I have known it, but it's gone out of my head. She might have been a brewer too. That's the other.
Jennifer, that's the other name that's there.
Well, there are. Let me see. There's Frank and Matilda Gillette, Josephine Graves, their daughter, Caleb Bishop, Sarah Shaw, and Henry and Eliza Brewer. Those are the 7 names. And I presume they all bear some relationship to one another, but I don't know what, aside from the parents and daughter, I don't know what the relationships are.
So the daughter had a spouse, but he's not buried there. So,
I presume so, just because her last name is Graves. But I don't know beyond that. And again, that would be super difficult to find out. She lived from 1892 to 1965. Lots of things could happen to her husband. Maybe he's on a tombstone somewhere.
Now you made a comment about him being a dancer.
He was a dance instructor.
Right, I thought maybe you had said something like, isn't that interesting or something?
I think that's an unusual occupation
Yeah.
for such a small town.
Right.
I was thinking
Or a
that
mill
too.
village,
Yeah,
You would think, it'd be something down in the city or, be studying that down there. I was wondering, as you were talking about that, if there was ever a time when you came across any research or any word of mouth of what the daughter had to go through the last 30 years of her life, being part of this mythology, because her mother now is the lady in Granite. If she ever, played that up or,
Never heard. In fact, it was only since you and I have been doing this thing that I went up there and paid real close attention to who all was buried there, and realized that one of the burials was Frank and Matilda's daughter. It would be interesting to try to chase down her background. I hope that Matilda Gillette, in the last few months of her life, that was spared the awareness that there was this thing on the side of the big marker in her family's burial plot, and that people were claiming that it was some wrong woman who would come back from the dead. I wouldn't think that would go over
Can you
real well.
go over the 7 names again? There was, I know the 3, the two Gillettes and Josephine. You said there was a Shaw.
Sarah Shove, Shove, 1832-1904. And I have no idea where she fits in.
And the bishop is a man or a woman?
There's only one bishop there, Caleb Bishop, 1834 to 1895. But
And-
there's the bishop name is on the side of the stone.
Right,
So,
and then the Brewers are a couple.
and the
correct?
Brewers, yeah, well, I'm assuming that, okay? They were born 2 years apart.
And it's a
So,
man and a woman.
yeah, Henry and Eliza.
BREW?
Yeah.
or?
No, E.W. Did you have a question back
I did, but, oh, so is it possible that the daughter just changed her name to get away from this legend? Just out of
Your
sheer
guess is.
annoyance with people asking about it.
Well,
Sounds
it is
good to me.
interesting that her last name is Graves.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if Mrs. Brewer, let's for no other race, and the Bishop woman and the Schaff woman and the Gillette woman are all sisters. They could all be bishops.
Sounds good to me.
Well, I mean, in my family, both sides, they have, big families of girls, so you have all these girls with different last names.
Mhm. Yeah. I have to say I'm not well prepared on that topic, but should be findable. The one thing I think it's safe for us to assume is that simply because these people are all buried in that one plot, they must have had some relationship to one another, whether they were Gillettes or bishops or married into the Gillette and Bishop families.
The village is supposed to have the records, so you were talking about going back and see who's the superintendent,
Mm-hmm.
2 persons before.
Right. But then with Joni having discovered this article in the paper, that isn't necessary. Now we have documentary proof of the date by which that image had to have been on the side of the stone. And so in addition to what we already knew, which is that the husband died first, and that deep sixes a lot of the stories, now we know that the image was there before the wife died. Sir?
I noticed in the video there was underneath the face image there was a couple of different images there that like in the first one I noticed there was like this bowl type thing underneath the face, and then the next time it showed that was gone, and then there's like this thing on the side. Were those different tombstones?
No, it's the same image. That's another element of debate about, where exactly is her face. I've always interpreted that it's a silhouette, and we tried to showcase that with the actress sort of moving her mouth back. Depending on the lighting, though, of the day and the shadows with the tree overhead, it can sort of block or blend in, more of the torso area underneath the face. So it's the exact same image, but that's sort of the mystique about it, is that it kind of can morph itself a little bit here and there. When you first saw the image, were you able to see it as a silhouette, or was it pretty easy for you, or hard, or?
When I first saw it, I went up there with somebody else who was familiar with it, and they pointed out the features. This is her nose, and that's her eye. And one thing you probably noticed, and it might be what you're seeing, the face. Okay, we're going to call it a face, and it seems to be in profile. Is a kind of a light mottled gray against that real dark gray that's sort of flecked with black. That's the natural finish of the tombstone, okay? Underneath what we're calling the face, there's a like a wave or stripe of black. It's just black, okay? And that may be the thing that you're seeing and not seeing, because sometimes it's really difficult to distinguish it from that real dark gray background of the stone. Frankly, after I got to where, I could go up there and look at it and try to puzzle out what I was looking at, I thought I was looking at a lady lying in her coffin, viewed from the side with a black drape underneath it. So.
And what's interesting, I think you pointed this out in the film, but just to accentuate that, if you were to run your finger over the actual granite, it doesn't really change, which sort of implies that it is like an illusion you're seeing or something. greater than itself, or not just a defect in terms of the actual granite material itself. And of course, we can't really do a biopsy and scrape things off of a thing from a cemetery and study it. So, and I think that Chris said that, I don't know if he said it in this cut, but I remember one of the cuts he pointed out that you can't really test what this is if it's a defect scientifically, so it just sort of lingers in our consciousness as sort of some kind of a metaphysical mystery. As you were talking earlier, I also thought about that question about the gender and why does it have to be a man. It's really interesting because even in Yates County, I used to work as campus safety at KUCA for a brief period of time, and the guys I worked with were great guys, but they always said that they would run into George Ball every now and then, and that would be the ghost sort of roaming through the campus there in the summertime. But he didn't even, and he doesn't now have this sort of foreboding element of, you know, you're going to get hurt or he's going to run you out of Ball Hall or something like that. He just sort of is just sort of a ghost in and of itself, which I thought was really interesting. And a lot of the other sort of upstate New York enigmas, so to speak, like Willard Asylum, even that I don't hear much in terms of foreboding if you go there after night. So that's, I think, what's kind of unique about the Lady in Granite. I didn't know if anyone else had heard anything in this area of a ghost story in particular that was maybe comparable to this one in Lakeview Cemetery, or yes.
There is my grandmother. We were on the cemetery looking for my mom when she was jogging, and there was this closed down church. I saw it, and I asked her what was that. So she said it was a place used for bad people. So like I'm thinking, what happens if, you know, she? I just know they're kind of similar.
Mm-hmm. I think he means the chapel right in the middle of the
Yes.
cemetery. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
not marked or named or anything, it is an odd structure.
Yeah. It's just in the middle of the
Mhm.
cemetery.
I'm on the village board, and after the spring showing, somebody came to the, requested to, permission to be in there at night and do a seance.
Cool.
And because it's closed after sunset, you know, the sunrise or dusk to dawn, I think it says in there. So we gave him permission that, I could probably get the name of the person, of the person that's doing the seance.
Wow, I'd love to. Yeah.
See what happens.
Because we do have, you know, some psychics in the area and some other people that are, you know, tapping into that sort of, that line of thinking, I should say. But I've heard people go there and do it without the permission, but of course you can't really find out the results. That would be really interesting to see what they would have to say about that.
Yeah, well, we would have the request.
Great.
Awesome.
Were there any conditions placed upon that, or?
No, I don't think so. It was at night, they had, you know, they said maybe how many people were gonna be there, and how long they were gonna be there, but nothing.
So you're saying that we're gonna go out there tonight?
Well,
We had a group of them
these
go
people
out.
came to the village board and got permission, and none of them ever been seen since.
I think the other thing that adds a lot of mystery to this topic is, you know, there's no photographs of her at all, or him, that I've been able to find. I know that you've been a big help, and the library has been, but the cemetery currently has not been open to sort of much of a dialogue, probably because they get asked about this all the time. So that was kind of an interesting thing to have them sort of have some reluctance to participating. But again, you know, it just brings another element of what is really happening, how long has this story been out there, who's it really affected, who's it touched, all those sorts of things. I don't think the story's going to stop anytime. I mean, we'll be talking about this for many more Halloweens coming up. Anything else tonight, or any other questions, concerns? Yes?
I'm kind of intrigued by the filmmaking process now, to move away from the spooky part. The original cut that you showed in the springtime was really, really good, but I think this is, and even is a massive improvement even. I think you did a really great job with the special effects and those drone shots and getting the reenactments with the kids and everything. Have you thought of submitting it to any, I don't know, film festivals, contests, anything of that nature that's out there?
I have. I submitted the first festival, the first cut to the SUNY Festival for just the students, and I waited to hear back about that, but I would certainly like to submit it. I've actually had a couple films this past spring get into two sort of horror Halloween-esque film festivals, and I'd like to submit this one to them next, actually next fall. I do have a film premiering this Saturday called Cuca at the cinema in downtown Rochester, if anyone wants something to do on Halloween. So if you want to go see Cuca Lake again on the big screen and feel bad that summer is long past, it's there at the cinema. But yeah, I certainly would love to promote this film and certainly get it out to festivals or have it sort of continue to take this big wave and have it see how far it can go.
Awesome.
I have two questions. Number one, just to make this clear, so whatever you do, if you disturb her in any way, you're gonna get bad luck anyhow. Like if you escape, you're gonna get bad luck.
I think that's the general gist of it. Like even if you're out of the cemetery, the next day, you could get a cold or get the flu or break your leg or something just bad could happen to you.
Shut the penny down the drain.
And my other one was, I was wondering, when he was explaining about the sparks and stuff past midnight, was that animation?
Yes, it was. Yeah, the can did not hit the actual gravestone. We sort of moved it around.
All gravestones were injured.
Yeah. I know someone's foot hit the stone, but we slowed that down in slow motion, and we didn't want their big toe to get broken. So, yeah.
It's always wise to be respectful of the markers in a cemetery. But, boy, if you haven't seen this thing, I mean, if the Titanic were a tombstone, this thing is a youch. It's a huge, gigantic, it's taller than you are. And it's like, however long, and it's just solid granite, I think.
I printed that off, Mr. Kramer, just because you talked about the beaver.
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you.
May. Not too far away from the lake, maybe 100 feet, 50 feet, not even.
Yeah, if you go up to the cemetery, which I'm sure you all will immediately, and you're facing the lady in granite. If you turn right around 180 degrees, okay? So now you're facing down the hill toward the street. A little ways down that hill, and maybe slightly to the left, is this tombstone. And in actuality, it's probably about as long as this radiator. And it's a kind of an orangey color. And I don't know how well you can see this. How about if I just pass it around so y'all can look? There is on that stone the most remarkable true-to-life image of what I think is a woodchuck. I think, if anything, that image is a lot plainer of a woodchuck than the lady in granite is of a lady. But I have never heard story number one about why it's there.
It's funny because when we were filming this last time, I showed that to the cast, and they were saying there should be a story where sort of roams the countryside, this jaguar, whatever it is, and rips everyone up and chews everyone up.
I really like that story about when the lady in Granite's finally finished filling in, that she's gonna leap into action and just all hell's gonna break loose.
So the
Watch for that
story
Halloween
isn't over
2016.
yet.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
What was the name on this stone?
I don't even remember what the name is. Isn't that awful?
The lucky thing about going to the monument on the Lady in Granite is that it's the side facing the road is where the image will be up. I think it's the farthest south entrance, and you go up, what, 3 rows and take a right, I think, and it's maybe like the 5th one up on that little crest, I think.
I was gonna say the second lane.
The second line, okay.
Yeah, if you go in the main entrance, you go right up to the main drag, and you take the second lane to the right. It goes up a rather steep hill, about halfway up the hill on the left-hand side. If you get that far, you will not miss it, because it's huge. And it has this image on the side, probably watching you. So, yeah.
Now, is the video here to be borrowed?
We do have some, one copy, I think. I do have some on sale if anyone wanted to purchase one. It's like $5, or we have another screening on Thursday night in case someone you know wasn't able to make it or you wanted to come back and watch it again. Certainly, I think there is one. Is it out right now? The one-
Oh, actually, we borrowed it internally just in case
Oh, okay.
we didn't have a copy for the
Okay.
crew that's coming on Thursday. So right now that's in the office, but it is around for now. That's the original cut, so it doesn't include all of the stuff that you saw tonight.
Right. I'll be certain to update that for you.
Cool.
Another question?
Did you, I was here last year, did you edit it at all? Like, did you add new stuff, retake it and stuff like that?
Yes, the one in May did not have the reenactments with the children, any of the drone shots, or the interview with the officer, Erwin. So it will be longer, and you can tell that if you look at video long enough, you can tell that it wasn't exactly made on the same sequential camera, but, you know. So. Well, I really appreciate everyone coming out. I hope that this got you in the mood for Halloween. Everyone's entitled to one good scare, so yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks everybody, and please take a cookie with you if you would like.